Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the comprehensive yet informal study of Kant's critique of pure reason. We are in the transcendental logic part of the work, and in some sort of system of subsections. We're in section 3, systematic representation of all synthetic principles, which is important for understanding where we are, that title, and I'm going to let Patrick explain that in a second. And underneath that third section, we're in another subsection entitled Systematic Representation of All Synthetic Principles of Pure Understanding. So with that said, we were talking before this recording, and Patrick had a pretty good summary of where we are, and just for visual reference of the page, last time we were on this little diagram, or we ended on this little diagram here, and this paragraph, and we're now going into the axioms of intuition. So with that said, Patrick, would you like to provide that nice summary that you were
Yeah,
referring to
we
earlier?
are we are like in the midst of the part of the critique of pure reason, which I think is probably the easiest to get completely lost in, because earlier he laid out the categories, right? And now it seems like he's doing them again, but listing completely different names for them. So he's making some kind of distinction between the category and it seems like their application. But the key to me is the word synthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So when he just presented a category, for example, unity, universality. What else did he present as a category?
Like change?
Quantity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that he did change. He had
Oh.
cause and effect.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
But when he presented those, they were just pure concepts, just staying in sort of in space. But I mean, I say in space, really not in space.
Yeah. Not
Is
in
the key
Kantian
point.
space.
Not in space,
In the
but
realm of the
just
pure
hanging out there.
understanding.
The point is now he's trying to figure out, okay, how do these categories apply objectively to the world? And he says, well, we need to systematically represent the way that these categories can be used for a synthesis, right? Namely, a way that we can bring together the appearances that appear before us in time and space, but most importantly, time, because he says inner sense is the general um, principle of it. And where we last left off, he was giving an explanation of the distinction between mathematical
Oh
and
yes. Let me go
dynamical
to that
principles,
diagram right here. Let's consult this. consult this.
which was one
Hopefully
of the
helpful
more,
diagram.
which was to me one of the more clear distinctions he draws, because when he's talking about mathematical principles, they are purely formal in the sense that they don't posit that anything is, only what it is, right? So
Mm.
Aristotle, for instance, says that by a definition, we do not learn whether a thing is, but only what it is. If I say, you know, um, a pink unicorn with a giraffe neck and bat wings, right? I have now given you a description of a what, but it is not clear that that thing is at all, right? So with mathematics, Kant says that we are simply describing objects that we postulate as possible objects, and based on that, we learn that it is. Sorry, not that it is, what it is. On the contrary, physiological, what he calls dynamical principles, such as cause and effect, right, actually postulate a that something is. So in the past, Kant says it had been called into question, namely by Hume, whether or not such principles that assert that something is can be, because they're not obviously a priori, right? According to Kant, mathematical principles are obviously a priori because the proof lies in the object itself. You construct the triangle, you look at the triangle, you see that whatever way you construct it, it has to have 180 degrees as the sum of its angles. But cause following from effect doesn't follow directly if you just consider the cause and the effect. According to Kant, it only follows if you also consider the conditions of possible experience. So mathematics, he says, has its immediate apodictic certainty, or its proof, basically, and
Cause and effect
dynamical
has it in
principles,
space and
cause
time.
and effect. Yeah, it has it somewhere else, indirectly, through not even space and time, strictly time.
Mm.
He's much more focused on the form of inner sense here,
Yes.
which is time.
Um,
So I
Great.
hope that was as clear. That's as clear as I can get
That's
it, I
very
think, right
clear
now.
for me. And if people have been following up to this point, like they should be, like we keep recommending pretty much every time we do this, that I think will make sense. If not, leave us a comment. We'll be happy to engage with you. And feel free to join Kant Study. We might have a new visitor today from my graduate program who expressed interest in joining us. I don't think he's here yet, but he's here. Zack, you're muted. But welcome. We're happy to have you. This is Patrick and Harrison as well as I, and we're
Hi,
all
Zack.
Hello.
yeah. So you're muted, just so you know. But since we are on a bit of a time crunch, let's
Guys,
let's
how
get
do you,
into it. And
how do you screenshot on Windows?
what's that?
How do you screenshot on Windows?
Um,
This-
I'm not sure, but I can send you this. Well, I could probably put this PDF in Discord, and if you have a copy of Critique of Pure Reason from Dr. Lee's class, it's on page 285.
Got it.
Um, cool. So we're picking up on the axioms of intuition here. Would anyone like to begin reading?
Sure. So, principle of pure understanding, all appearances are as regards their intuition, extensive magnitudes.
And then in the
the
second
second
edition, yeah.
Okay. All appearances contain as regards their form and intuition in space and time, which grounds all of them a priori. They cannot be
Apprehended.
apprehended before. They are therefore, i.e., taken up into empirical consciousness, except through the synthesis of the manifold, through which the representations of a determinate space or time are generated, i.e., though the composition of that which is homogeneous, and the consciousness of the synthetic unity of this manifold of the homogeneous. Now, the consciousness of the homogeneous manifold and intuition in general, insofar as though the representation of an object first becomes possible, is the concept of magnitude, quanti.
Mm.
Thus, even the perception of an object as appearance is possible only through the same synthetic unity of the manifold of given sensible intuition, through which the unity of the composition of the homogeneous manifold is thought in the concept of a magnitude, i.e., the appearances are all magnitudes, and indeed extensive magnitudes, since an intuition in space or time must be represented through the same synthesis as that through which space and time in general are determined.
Okay. This is pretty interesting. Some new material in this paragraph. We can break it down. The thing that first jumps out at me about this is that we have a sort of origin, I guess you could say, or yeah, so something significant about magnitude here. The consciousness of the homogeneous manifold and intuition in general, and so far.
When he says that there are magnitudes, right, he's talking about anything appearing before us, taking up a
Yes.
quantity of time and space.
Yes.
So whatever, and whenever we have a unity in our experience, it's because we postulated it, right? So for instance, if I
Yes.
have a table, I am the one who has had to determine what are the limits of that table, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so having done that, I've set limits to the table in space and time. And those limits are exactly what the word, like that's what a magnitude is.
Magnitude is, yes. So, well, I guess that's not new. Maybe that's just an implication, but I think it might be clear to have that. And they're indeed extensive magnitudes. I don't really know what other kind of magnitude you would have
Intensive magnitudes.
with intuitions, though.
I don't know that intensive magnitudes are like. I don't think that those are real. I think
That's
that
what I'm saying. Yeah, like with
magnitudes are,
intuitions, you really only have extensive magnitudes.
right. Well, okay. I don't think magnitudes are properly intensive, but that's an entirely different subject.
Yeah.
Please.
Anyway, sorry.
Right now we're dealing with extensive magnitudes.
Yes, that's what I was trying to point out. Cool. Would anyone like to read the next paragraph?
Sure, I'll go.
Thanks.
I call an extensive magnitude that in which the representation of the parts makes possible the representation of the whole, and therefore necessarily precedes the latter. I want to read that footnote. 6, 2.
62.
Is that? Oh, is that
Oh,
the
that's
footnote?
an end note.
Okay,
Let
never
me.
mind.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I could go in
Because
my
that is
copy, but
here. It seems to me to be an open question which one precedes the other and in what sense. Anyway, moving forward. I cannot represent to myself any line, no matter how small it may be, without drawing it in thought, i.e., successively generating all its parts from one point. Okay, so in that sense, it precedes the latter.
mm-hmm.
And thereby first sketching this intuition. It is exactly the same with even the smallest time. I think therein only the successive progress from one moment to another, where through all parts of time and their addition a determinate magnitude of time is finally generated.
So this is kind of just the transcendental schema, like over again, no?
Well, this is very weird to me because he says that in order to represent a determinate time, I have to first represent all the other determinate times. But each one of
What?
those is infinitesimal. So it's not like I've put together a bunch of parts. It seems to me, on the contrary, like I've had some whole of my experience presented
Yeah,
to me and then divide a part out from it.
yeah, discreetly.
Well, I mean, like with time, isn't it like you experience each moment like I guess like if you picture a line, like I guess you see the line and then until you stop seeing the line, it's indeterminate how long that line will be there until you stop seeing the line. So
So
when you start,
yeah.
so then when
Oh,
you first see the line, then you progressively, as long as you're holding on to, I guess it's like I don't know if that makes sense.
Right,
But it's like
but
you
what
start.
Patrick is saying, even that part of a line is like uh already has infinitesimal like parts inside
so
of that line. So like, where do
so
you really start?
so
What
the
does that
question is,
mean?
how do we literally draw a line in thought?
Yeah,
Kant
how do we
says
start?
it's by putting the parts together. By putting together the parts of the line. Well, what are the parts of the line? Literally an infinity of possible
Yes.
points. So according to Kant, we need to put together an infinity of points in order to make any line.
Well, this
Whereas it
is the
seems to
Zeno thing.
me,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly. But like it seems to me, the way you would actually draw the line is you select one continuous point, and then there's a continuum, and then you select another continuous point, and bam, you have a line.
Maybe that's what he means?
Well, how?
Maybe
Well,
generating all its parts has to do with picking from that infinitesimal. Oh,
well,
wait, yes,
well,
wait. I think that's correct because aren't we following this? So that means this isn't the same as the transcendental schema because this is probably assuming
Yeah.
that the schema already happened, right? And so we have that infinitesimal thing from the schema. So don't we pick from that? I
I
don't
don't
know
know why you're bringing in the concept of a schema here.
because
The
that's where we
schema
get
here
the
would be
infinitesimal.
the schema would be the schema of a line in general, because a schema is a general kind of representation
Exactly.
that matches onto a concept. But Kant here is talking about. I mean, he's using a schema to make the
I
demonstration, but
mean,
he's
yes.
talking about a specific line. So, for
Yeah.
example, draw a line now with your eyes across your screen. Everyone.
Yeah.
That's the line we're going to refer to.
Okay.
Okay? So that line that you just drew is now no longer a schema because we've made it a specific line.
Right.
We're only talking about that.
And
Okay?
the way we did that.
Problem still persists. The way we did that, he's saying, is by putting together all those infinitesimal points. And to me, it seems like I don't think so. I think you just mark out a point to start and a point to stop. And
well,
then the infinitesimal divisibility comes afterwards.
Well,
Right.
I feel like that depends on the nature of, because if you say to draw a line, as in to actively draw it, there's this implicit idea that you are moving from one place to another. I'm drawing it. But if you just say imagine a line, it just like pops into existence. You aren't necessarily dividing up the line. It just appears.
Exactly, which is that's
Yeah,
why
I know what
I'm
you're saying.
well here. So the reason I'm bringing up the transcendental schema is because I think the schema is what supplies us with the infinitesimal amount of points to then actually like draw the line from, not merely imagine one.
Well, I mean, like,
Does that make
But he
sense
said
or no?
so we're not.
Well,
So we're not
I
talking about.
understand what you're saying, I think, now, but he said draw the line in thought. He didn't say actually physically draw out the line. So really, what he's talking about is think align.
Hmm.
Think
Which
align.
is so. I guess maybe that is the same as the scheme.
So if he means think align, how is he even like? How is he like necessarily determined? Like, because I feel like the workings of that wouldn't be
Oh,
transcendental.
wait.
It
Hold on.
would be transcendent.
We also might just fundamentally disagree with Kant here because you have to remember space like space is like inherently just kind of like a thing you can imagine with nothing else inside of it infinitesimally. So he might think we're picking from that, but we're kind of disagreeing that we can do that from to begin with. That might have a role to play in this as well.
Okay. That might be okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think I am disagreeing with Kant. I'm not sure.
No, but I'm saying the reason why might have to, like, I'm aware, but I'm saying
Yeah.
like the reason why might be because he thinks that the infinitesimal thing is already there, and we can just successfully generate things in space, like in this pre-existent space that we like way back in the aesthetic took issue with to begin with. So if we took issue with the foundation of how we are going to draw the line, then we probably will also disagree with how we draw a line at all in thought. That actually might be what's going on here. That's my theory.
Okay. Well,
So we're
I
disagreeing.
think we're gonna keep it ambiguous.
Yeah, let's move on. I think that's enough food for thought. If you have an additional theory or thought, leave it in the comments. So right now we don't really have the time to spend too much bickering about with Kant about this. Okay, do you want to continue reading, Patrick?
Sure thing. Since the mere intuition in all appearances is either space or time, every appearance as intuition is an extensive magnitude,
Mm-hmm.
as it can only be cognized through successive synthesis from part to part in apprehension.
Mm-hmm.
All appearances are accordingly already intuited as aggregates, multitudes of antecedently given parts, which is not the case with every kind of magnitude, but rather only those that are represented and apprehended by us as extensive.
But are we only
Again,
dealing with extensive magnitudes?
What
well,
makes it
like he said, he does believe in an intensive magnitude.
wait, intensive? Wait, so just to clarify, extensive is like in space, and then intensive is
And a time.
Extensive is space and time.
what's
An
intensive? Then?
intensive, I feel like Kant is going to use a concept like heat, but heat only appears to be extensive. I mean, okay, heat
Wait.
presents itself in our direct experience to be in intensive magnitude,
Yes.
but that's questionable. I don't know. It's so hard to give an example of an intensive magnitude because
like-
it seems
is it
like
like a-
any time I do that, I can think, well, maybe that's actually extensive, or maybe that's not a magnitude.
Well,
What
is
it's trying to be is
it-
like
is
a
it-
question of like how much force is there, or like what is the gravitational pull of an object, the weight of it, the intensive magnitude.
Yo,
Is
force in the
the-
understanding, yo.
Wait, so extensive. So extensive is taking place in space and time. So are intensive and extensive? They're both quantities, right?
Yes. The key
They're-
point I think to remember
Yes, they're
that
magnitudes.
makes it absolutely true is that intensive is not taking place in space and time.
I see. Well, I mean,
Simple enough.
actually, I disagree with. I feel like it has to exist in time. Maybe not space, but definitely time.
Well,
Like,
everything
it's
has
like-
to
I
exist
can
in
have,
time for us.
No, it's not
Well,
that there are such experiences that don't exist in time, but rather that the magnitude, right?
It's not a time thing.
Yeah, in question is not a magnitude of time or a magnitude of space.
I see. So kind of like an emotion. Like if I feel a thing,
Sure.
like if I
You can
okay,
feel more or less intensively, right? The word
see.
intensively means
I
like
understand.
okay, yeah, that's what he's getting at. I just think it's questionable whether these are really magnitudes or not.
I will say I think at least with the emotion example, like because I can't like imagine a feeling of love or happiness with reference to space and time. I just can't. Like that is a well, I can feel it like I can reference it in regards to say like sensation, but I also there are aspects of that which do not involve my body that I don't map onto my body.
I think Schelling would agree with you. Read Schelling, by the way. It's very interesting.
Yes. So I guess in regards to like emotion and kind of like internal or mind senses, I kind of see what he's saying
Okay.
to an extent.
Yeah.
So I guess we're gonna move forward.
Yeah. Let's see. Zack is still muted. So I guess I'll read this next paragraph, and Zack, if you unmute, feel free to read a paragraph. Um, on the successive synthesis of the productive imagination and the generation of shapes is grounded the mathematics of extension, geometry, with its axioms, which express the conditions of sensible intuition a priori, under which alone the schema of a pure concept of outer appearance can come about. E.g., between 2 points, only one straight line is possible. 2 straight lines do not enclose a space, etc. These are the axioms that properly concern only magnitudes, quanta, as such. Okay, so the rules for schema are geometrical, because geometry is the mathematics of extension, and we're dealing with extensive magnitudes. That seems pretty straightforward to me. Anybody have any other? No. Okay. Rare, very clear, and non-controversial Kant thing, at least
Well, some of them are
within
non-controversial just because he
within
says
his own
things that
system.
were
Yeah.
said again. Like some of them are just like, well, it's not. There's nothing to say because he's just repeating himself. But this is the rare one where he's saying something at least slightly new, and it's obviously clear.
Yeah. So W. Let's get a yippee. W paragraph Kant. Okay. Who wants to read the next paragraph? Yeah. Harrison, do you want to go with this one? We'll just keep going in the order.
Sure. Yeah. I'm finished. I'm still writing down a definition for.
Then I'm gonna read it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But concerning magnitude, quantitas, very necessary to include Latin, I score. I.e., the example, the answer to the question, how big is something? Although various of these, it's very important that you represent that with the Latin phrase quantitas, by the way. Although various of these propositions are synthetic and immediately certain, indemonstrability. If you didn't know, that means indemonstrable.
Indemonstrable. Indemonstrable.
There are nevertheless no axioms in proper sense. Oh, okay.
Yeah, what the fuck?
All right. For that equals added to subtracted, but
what the fuck?
or that equals added to or subtracted from equals. Oh, okay, equals like equal numbers. Subtract, given equal are analytic propositions. If I am immediately conscious of the identity of one generation of magnitude with the other, but axioms ought to be synthetic a priori propositions. I'm failing to see the logic. How does that follow? Okay, so there are nevertheless no axioms in the proper sense. For that equals added, okay, blah, 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 are analytic propositions. Since I am immediately conscious of the identity of one generation of magnitude with the other. But axioms ought to be synthetic a priori intuitions. Okay, but that's not the only kind of... That doesn't seem to be the only... Concerning magnitude, there are no axioms, he says.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives an example, which does seem to be analytic, right? That equals, let's just say added to, equals added to equals are equal. Okay, sure, that seems to be analytic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, like, what about the axiom of, like, what a number is? I mean, he says that arithmetic is synthetic a priori, so how does it have no synthetic a priori axioms? I'll just let him cook for now.
Yeah, I guess so.
The self-evident propositions of numerical relation, on the contrary, are to be sure synthetic, but not general. Okay, how are they not general? Like those of geometry, and for that reason they cannot be called axioms, but would rather be named numerical formulas. Should be formulae.
Yeah. Translation. Come on, Paul Guyer and Alan Wood. What are you doing?
That's maybe both are correct. Maybe both are correct. I
I'm
don't
not
know.
sure. Data, data. I don't
But
know.
why would I say formulas when I could say formulae? You
Yeah.
know.
Come on. Where's the aesthetic here? Nietzsche. We gotta have the better sounding.
That 7 plus 5 equals 12 is not an analytic proposition. Thanks, we established that in the introduction.
Mm-hmm.
For I do not think that the number 12, either in the representation of 7 nor that of 5, nor in the representation of the combination of the two, that I ought to think this in the addition of the two is not here at issue. In the case of an analytic proposition, the question is only whether I actually think the predicate in the representation of the subject. Although it is synthetic, however, it is still only a singular proposition. Okay. So, for instance, when I gave that example of like, what about what 3 is? His answer is that this is a singular
Right.
proposition and therefore not an axiom. Whereas
Oh, so axioms. Oh,
general
axioms are synthetic, like connecting
and
propositions.
they're synthetic and general.
General meaning what again in this context? I'm having a Kant brain
Well,
fart.
general meaning that there's more than. I don't know. I don't know how to define that, but the example he gives is super clear to me, right? I can't have a principle that 3 is the number before 2, or sorry. I can study Kant, but I can't count anymore. 3 is the number after 2 and before 4. That would be not an axiom according to Kant because it is not general. I guess because it
Oh,
one.
I see. Yeah, so axioms have to be able to cover multiple, yeah, I guess objects.
I objects of thought in some sense or other. I don't know
Yeah.
whether.
Well, axioms of geometry, so geometrical entities.
But okay, a general proposition deals with more than one thing.
Yeah.
A proposition like 3 comes after 2 deals with exactly one thing.
A particular.
Two things.
Yes.
3 and 2.
Right, but it's a singular.
That's not what it means. It's not what it means.
Right, but it's what he says here. It's a singular proposition.
It deals with the relation, namely of 2 and
It
3.
deals with a
But
singular
that
relation.
Yes, exactly. That relation is what is in question, and it's a singular relation. You can't draw any other conclusions from that.
So, okay, so an axiom is a synthetic general and deals with more than one relation, you could say.
Yes, and whereas the principles of like add equals to equals and you've still got equals, that's analytic. It's not synthetic, according to Kant. So there are no axioms, according to Kant.
Well, actually, what makes an axiom? Because I understand like synthetic is good if it's not a priori, but so why is wait? So what makes so some
So
some
let's talk about what an axiom is, right? In an axiom, you should be able to make multiple derivations from that axiom, and at the same time, the axiom needs to be unprovable and therefore synthetic, right? Because analytic, the proof lies exactly in what you've already said. So if it's just analytic, it's not an axiom.
Well, does an axiom have to be provable?
It has to be not provable.
It has to be not provable.
Otherwise, it's not. Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Axioms
if
are
it were provable, then it wouldn't be the axiom.
Right.
right.
It's not an axiom anymore. So any kind of analytic proposition, according to Kant, is not an axiom because it's provable. Whereas a singular principle, like 3 comes after 2, is also not an axiom because it's not general, and therefore you can't deduce other propositions directly from that axiom in some combination with other axioms, the way you would when you read the Ethics, for example, of Spinoza. Probably the more basic example would be Euclid. But,
yeah, we're based in here. No,
but obviously, I've read Spinoza and I haven't read Euclid yet. I will someday. I promise. Pinky promise. Anyway.
Well, this is helpful.
Okay. That makes sense. This is actually a Kant W moment, I think.
Yeah, more.
Well, then I guess so.
What's up, Harrison?
So it's not provable, but what do we? But it also like axioms seem to be a thing. It's like what are we synthesizing it with? Like what are we like? It's synthetic because it's it.
Propositions. You're synthesizing propositions, right?
I
But
think he's just saying that an axiom has to be synthetic in some way or other. Because if it's analytic, you can prove it, so it's not an axiom.
okay.
His assumption is that everything is either analytic or synthetic, and that everything analytic, the proof of it lies in the statements that have already been made. Therefore, if there's something that meets the conditions of an axiom, namely, uh, eh, well, okay, if there is something that meets the conditions of an axiom, of being unprovable and of being the grounds of other proofs, right? If there is such a thing, well, it couldn't be analytic, so it would have to be synthetic.
I see, but it wouldn't. It's but it not in the sense of it is labeled as synthetic simply because it is not analytic.
Well, I think he asserts that like it would actually be synthetic. It's
I
just that
just
he's not bringing the particular kind of synthesis that would be necessary to
I
axioms
see.
into
Okay,
this argument because he's just talking about how there are not axioms in math.
so he is just saying it is. But so he would say, but right now he is just saying it is synthetic because it is not analytic. It cannot be analytic.
Well, let's see. Insofar as it is the only synthesis of that which is homogeneous that is at issue here, the synthesis here can take place only in a single way, even though the subsequent use of these numbers is general. So, yeah, I guess it's.
Well, that's he's dealing with the latter part. Why the synthetic propositions in mathematics are not axioms.
Oh,
You'd have to go up to see
yeah.
what he's talks about. Why they're not analytic, like why analytic parts are not axioms. He says self-evident propositions of numerical relation, on the contrary, are to be sure synthetic but not general. Or he goes before that. He says, but axioms ought to be synthetic a priori propositions. He doesn't really explain that. It does seem obvious enough to me. The reasoning being that if I have an analytic proposition, it can be proved. It's not unprovable because I can just refer to what we've already said. For
Yep.
instance, if I have a principle like all bachelors are unmarried men, right? This is not an axiom because it's not unprovable. The definition of a bachelor we have already agreed to in having the conversation includes that it is an unmarried man. Really, it's identical to the idea of being an unmarried man.
Yeah.
So the proof lies in the definitions that have been proposed,
Yes.
and therefore it's not axiomatic.
Because something has to presuppose that for that to be possible,
Hmm?
which would be the axiom.
Something has to presuppose what?
Well, no, because it's not what an axiom is. It's something which is presupposed, which allows
Right.
you to
So an
get there
axiom
in the
is
first
something
place.
that needs to be presupposed, but I don't
Yeah.
really have to presuppose anything here. I've defined bachelor as an unmarried male, and
Well,
then
you don't have to presuppose anything consciously, but there are things which presuppose that which allow it to happen.
what do you mean?
I mean, like linguistically, I would say there are things that presuppose
I
that allow the definition to
suppose,
work.
but that's just because of the particular example we gave. I could just
Yeah.
literally say A equals A, and that's an analytic proposition, and it's not an
Yeah.
axiom.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on the same page, I think.
Yes, but then I think even like there's the axiom is the subtext that allows that to happen, which that A can equal A, or that
Okay.
A can equal B, or that a thing can equal a thing. I don't know.
Okay, I
I
think
guess
we're on the same page here.
I think we are. I guess I'm overcomplicating it probably, potentially.
Cool. Let's keep going then. Where did I even?
I think
leave
you were
off?
on insofar.
Insofar as it is only the synthesis of that which is homogeneous of units that is at issue here, the synthesis here can take place only in a single way, even though the subsequent use of these numbers is general. He's explaining why it's general.
Mhm.
If I say with 3 lines, 2 of which can be, which taken together are greater than the third, a triangle can be drawn, then I have the mere function of the productive imagination, which draws the lines greater or smaller, thus allowing them to abut any arbitrary angle. The number 7, on the contrary, is only possible in a single way. And likewise the number 12, which is generated through the synthesis of the formula with 5. Such propositions must therefore not be called axioms, for otherwise there would be infinitely many of them,
Aha, yes. Because they're infinite.
rather-
Yep.
but rather numerical formulae.
Yeah. Fuck you, Paul Wood and Alan Wood and Paul Geyer. No, I'm just kidding.
Formulas is probably also correct, but I like formulae better.
Formula is supremacy. Okay. Harrison, do you want to read, or are you writing?
I'll read. So we're
Okay.
at this transcendental principle.
Yes.
This transcendental principle of mathematics of appearances yields a great expansion of our a priori cognition. For it is this alone that makes pure mathematics in its complete precision applicable to objects of experience, which without this principle would not be so obvious, and has indeed caused much contradiction. Appearances are not things in themselves. Empirical intuition is possible only through the pure intuition of space and time. What geometry says about the latter is, therefore, undeniably valid of the former, and evasions, as if objects of the senses did not have to be in agreement with the rules of construction in space, e.g., the rules of the infinite divisibility of lines or angles, must cease, for one would thereby deny all objective validity to space, and with it at the same time to all mathematics, and would no longer know why and how far they are able to be applied to appearances. The synthesis of spaces and times as the essential form of all intuition is that which at the same time makes possible the apprehension of the appearance. Thus, every outer experience, consequently also all cognition of its objects, and what mathematics in its pure use proves about the former is also necessarily valid for the latter. All objections to this are only the chicanery of a falsely constructed reason, which erroneously thinks of freeing the objects of the senses from the formal condition of our sensibility, and though they are mere appearances, represents them as objects in themselves, given to the understanding, in which case certainly nothing synthetic could be cognized of them a priori at all. Thus, not even through pure concepts of space and the science that they determine, namely geometry, would not itself be possible.
Yeah. Fuck you, pure materialists.
We ran through this whole thing in the transcendental aesthetic. There's really no need for him to repeat himself here.
Nope. Really, all I want to say is that it has a really nice, succulent, dare I say, explanation at the beginning here, and I guess really this whole paragraph, but especially at the beginning of why mathematics is so applicable to experience, like in physics, like people are people are constantly like today too, just like it was in Kant's time with Newton. They're still constantly fascinated as to why nature abides by these mathematical rules. People also make really shitty arguments for God's existence using these principles, and Kant just puts it away nicely right in this especially the beginning of this paragraph. It's because pure mathematics literally forms the axioms of our of intuition, like the section is called. Oh, and look at that, we're done. So wow, that was very.
Why does everything we see conform to our minds? Who do you think's the one doing the seeing, bozo?
Yeah, literally. Oh god, it makes me so frustrated when I got in a huge argument on Instagram because like there was like a Christian apologetics page that like posed that exact like thing, but then it was like it's a transcendent God that clearly has enough I don't know, whatever quality they thought God was having was like, oh yes, this is this is proof that God exists, guys, that a separate entity other than us that, you know. And I was like, no, it's reason. And then people got really mad. Anyway, I had a personal story there attached to that kind of the content of this paragraph. So yeah, I really appreciate this. This will do wonders in current conversations about like why physics works and why it's beautiful, and what does it point to God or does it point to something else? I guess that depends on your definition of God, but not the God that the man in the sky that people try to use this argument for. That pisses me off to no end because of how clearly wrong and how beautifully Kant handles it. Anyway, that's my rant. But
I mean, hey, if you think about it, we're all men in the sky, unless you're a woman.
Yeah. Kantian wisdom of the day from me is don't forget to perceive your experience in such a way that your objects comply with the axioms of geometry.
There
Thing
are no axioms of geometry. Weren't you
or
listening?
the axioms of intuition that abide by the synthetic propositions
Well, I guess maybe they're
of
just
geometry.
magnitude.
And
Yeah.
so he's saying, so when he's saying there are no axioms to geometry, is that because
Yeah,
geometry?
no, it's not. It's not of geometry. It's
It's
no
yeah.
axioms of magnitude. Namely the quantity part of geometry. The axioms of geometry are axioms of spatial intuition.
Right.
Well, yeah,
Which he refers to way back, like even before like this.
well, aren't they also? Wait. When he's saying they're not quantities, what does that mean? For
So,
instance,
for example, like Euclid literally, his axioms will never involve numbers. They'll be like the shortest point between two. That might be a definition. I'm
Well, yeah.
actually gonna pull up the. I'm gonna pull up Euclid's Elements.
Okay.
About to pull up. As soon as. Okay, Gutenberg. Let's go, Gutenberg.
Euclid's Elements. Okay.
So, axioms. Okay, so some of these Kant would say are not proper axioms. For example, if equals be added to sums, if equals be added to equals, the sum will be equal. That is not an axiom according to Kant because that is an analytic statement. Probably the same with the whole is greater than the part. But if you get to something like two right lines cannot enclose a space, this is the equivalent to if two right lines have 2 points in common, they coincide in that direction. That is, they form but one line. So, for example, two right lines, meaning perpendicular lines, two lines that form a right angle, can never enclose a space. And
Yeah.
of course, this means on a Euclidean plane, namely a
Yes, on a
two-dimensional
flat plane. Yeah.
right? This is taken to be an axiom because it can't actually be demonstrated from like the definition of two angles at a right angle, right? How do you get from there to enclose a space? Well, you have to literally put it forward in your imagination and just know how space works. How do you do that? It's based on your intuition.
I see. Okay.
Cool.
So then, axioms in this case are not things that we. Would you say? Well, I guess depending on how you say consciously, they aren't things that we consciously presuppose. They are things that are presupposed on our experience.
Yeah, well, he says they're axioms of intuition, and intuition isn't a process, so it's not a discursive thing. It's just they're presented to us.
I see.
Source: it is known.
I see.
So, yeah.
Very interesting.
Wie cool ist das bitte?
Fortnite und Cola.
Yippee!
Yippee! I love wie cool ist das bitte. I love the wie cool ist das bitte. It's like you translate it to English and it's like, how cool is that, please? How cool is that, please?
Yeah, it's like those like people that are like please, how cool is that?
Yeah, I don't know where the bitte comes in, but he's very polite in his pure joy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. Zach, thank you.
A good one.
Yeah, this was a good Kant study. Definitely not like the greatest in terms of like insightful, like groundbreaking content, but also very clear, very helpful, and very, I'd imagine, foundational for what will follow.
Well, I didn't realize that there were no axioms of magnitude.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. That's kind of just very like that's very insightful and very very helpful.
So
that's
that's cool.
That's cool. I'm pleased that we did this, and I'm walking away with that information. That is useful. So, and just generally interesting. So, based. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time um, for the anticipations of perception.
Woo!
Yay!
The anticipation is killing me already.
I should have. What sound can I?
Canned laughter.
Oh, let's add a new one. That's a moan.
What? That is not canned laughter.
Whoa there.
Hey, look. To be fair, I searched canned laughter.
Let's not get that informal.
Yeah. Let's formalize this Kant study a bit more, just a bit.
Little less informal. All right,
Yeah.
we don't want to violate the category.
There's a magnet. Yeah. Can't violate it if we don't know about it because we haven't gotten there yet. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks, Dr. Cole. Now I have to follow the damn rule. Just kidding. I've read Phenomenology of Spirit and Hegel's beautiful deconstruction of that.
Just kidding. I've read Stirner, and now I know morality is a spook.
Crazy. Read Stirner. It seems fun. Patrick's read it. He recommends it.
It's very simple. He's like, you can do what you want. They can't stop you.
What's Goku drip?
Let's go. I'm not sure when that will be useful, but add it to the board.
Why is it called Goku drip? Is that in Dragon Ball at some point?
Yeah, it is in Dragon Ball.
Oh, all right. I feel like we're about to delineate into a conversation about Dragon Ball, so I'll end it here. Have a go, everybody. We'll see you next time for anticipations of perceptions, which the anticipation is killing us. Ha ha ha! Goodbye.